Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, Jess, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We definitely have a lot of things to talk about, even though it's one of the slowest times of the year. We got Chris Mueller over at the 93.7 The Fan Cam to break down Paul Skeens a little bit, what he thought of his All-Star debut, the youngest pitcher since Dwight Gooden back in '86, only the fifth rookie pitcher, first since, 95, Adeo Nomo. Pretty impressive, I think, to do what he did on that big of a stage. And obviously, I don't even want to say he's a superstar in the making. I think he's a superstar right now.
Yeah, he's the best pitcher in baseball right now, for my money. 11 starts into his career. I think the biggest sign of respect is, I think I saw a tweet, Richie, I don't know if you did, that Juan Soto and Gunnar Henderson and Judge, all those guys were huddled around, I guess, talking to each other, and guys were coming over picking their brains, and there was like a little workshop about the pitches that they saw from Skeens and kind of trying to figure out what they were seeing and what he was throwing. So that's the kind of respect he commanded from those guys. And he showed why he is what he is. Soto worked a walk that I probably thought was a strikeout. I think he got crossed up on that last pitch, but I think it hit the zone. And those guys were aggressive and tried to get the best out of him, but they couldn't do it because he is that dang good.
Hey, were you surprised he wasn't hammering 100 miles per hour plus with all his pitches? I mean, he only threw two that were plus 100. His first pitch was 98. I thought him going out there, rookie, on this big stage, he was going to try to impress everyone and hit 103 or 102 a couple times.
He told us a long time ago on the PM team that he has never once, not one time in his career, has he tried to just throw a ball with a gun, like a radar gun going, just to see how high he could run it up there. He said, I've never done it. So I think that's kind of interesting. I think he wanted to show the entire repertoire because that's the reason he's so special. I mean, there's a lot of guys that can throw 102, truthfully, in the reliever game. Not a lot of guys that can do it as starters, but it's that splitter, sinker combo, splinker, if we want to keep using that term. That makes him special. The command of the four-seamer makes him special. The ability to work in the slider, even though that pitch has room for refinement, that makes him special. The fact that the guy's just got about 10 different weapons, it seems like, to attack hitters with, that's what makes him so great. And it seemed like he wanted to put pretty much everything he can do on display and not just throw pure gas, Richie.
You know, his splinker is basically unhittable. But, I actually heard the interview that you had with Denny Nagel the other day, who said that they threw that pitch. He threw that pitch back in the day, but, someone like Skeens does it a little bit better.
Well, the difference is velocity there. I think Nagel said it basically, I think maybe it was Nagel or Drabek or both, compared it to like just an old kind of fork ball, right?
Yeah.
And most guys would throw that fork ball at, 89? Maybe you'd see it at 90, 91. Paul Skeens throws it 95, tops it out like near 97. That's just... It's not fair. When you can throw a pitch that is supposed to make up for its lack of velocity with its sink and its downward movement, and you can retain that downward movement and throw it harder than a lot of guys throw their best four-seamer, that's kind of dumb. Like that just seems like it's not fair to the hitter at that point.
All right, well, we're going to continue our conversation about the All-Star game and Paul Skeens coming up. So give us a call, 412-575-2600 is the number. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our GMC Tweet of the Night. And it's a big deal over at Pitt for the Hoop team. This is from the Pitt basketball team who tweeted out, Coach Capel extended through 29-30 season, a 3-year extension. He's really turned the program around the last 2 years. He was probably on the verge of, getting his walking papers at some point until he had that season 2 years ago, getting his team to go into the NCAAs. They should have, my opinion is they should have gotten a bid last year and they didn't. But I think he has this Pitt program heading in the right direction, Chris.
Yeah, I think it's a fickle thing sometimes, though, which is why I would praise him a ton for the work he's done the last 2 years. And I do think he's started to successfully get more ACC-style players, which is less rough and tumble, maybe more a little high-flying than the old Big East that Pitt was used to getting. It's just a fickle thing if you're one of those programs in the maybe upper middle class of the Power Five, which if you're a top half ACC team, you should be considered that. You've got your blue bloods who are always going to find ways through NIL to make sure they're getting the best players. And then you have the teams that are kind of adjacent to that, Richie. And then there's the next step down, and I think that's where Pitt is. They're not a blue blood, and they're not like a blue blood adjacent, but they're an upper middle class college basketball team. And so I think his challenge now, Jeff Capels, for basically the rest of the decade is continue to find the impact players you found and manage to keep them. If you lose them to the NBA after 1 year like Bub Carrington, I think that's a net positive for the program in many ways. But they can't afford to have guys maybe only stick around here for 1 year, because you've got to try to build something in an era where it's inherently been harder to build than before.
Well, we know how great of a recruiter Jeff Capel is, but how does NIL impact this at a school like Pitt? I know they have the 412 Alliance, but they're not Kentucky, UNC, Kansas, places like that.
When you have a guy that might be a high-impact player, or maybe you have two, and there might be an NIL amount that both guys want, you have to figure out maybe there's going to be judicious budget decisions, I think, that get made. I think that's going to become part of the new normal in college sports, is especially in basketball where there's so few players, relatively speaking. It's going to be, if we have a couple guys that are impactful, but one of them might be looking for literal greener pastures, how do we prioritize these players? Do we have somebody on the roster who can step in? It's just a different way to build and then maintain a program than we ever saw before. I think Capel's well equipped for it, because I don't think he tries to fight it like some coaches do, like rage against the new way of doing things. It's just going to be a matter of identifying the right players to both keep and then bring in from outside.
All right, let's hit the phone lines. We got Curtis out in Hampton. How you doing, Curtis?
I want to talk Pirates pitching. Just wondering what you think the Pirates, how close in contention do you think the Pirates are going to have to be to not shut down Skeens and Jared Jones? I mean, they've been very conservative with innings pitched, watching pitch counts traditionally. I think if they shut those guys down, especially Skeens, and they're even remotely close to a playoff spot, people are not going to be happy. Just curious what you guys think. How close do you guys think they're going to have to be to keep them in the rotation?
You know, that's a good question. I think it's a question everyone wants to know. And I mean, they've made comments, and I don't think they're going to shut Skeens down. I don't know about Jones and his injury, if that will affect anything. But I think if they're within a couple games in that last month, they can't afford to shut either one of those guys down, because, you know, this fan base would absolutely go nuts.
Well, I think Keller's going to be the workhorse. I mean, Jones having this lat injury, let's say he comes back sometime in early, mid-August, I would hope, maybe.
Yeah, I think he's a month away, right?
Okay, well then you would hope you'd have him for the stretch drive and there'd be very few restrictions. You'd build him back up. Once he got up, he might have a short start or two just to build his arm back up, but then you would think he comes back with minimal restriction, like he won't have the innings count anywhere near where they would be in the danger zone. I think Skeen's going to be an interesting case. He pitched innings in the minor leagues. I think he's at something like 80-plus innings right now overall, AAA in the majors. I don't think, want him going above 150. So that's kind of a weighty issue. Like, I think he's going to have to skip at least one start in this back half of the season here, maybe even two. I think the optimistic side would be he skips one, but what really, Curtis in Hampton there, what he really gets at that I think is most interesting, let's say they get to the playoffs and Skeens is right around that 150 mark. What then? You going to see the Pirates shut a guy down in the playoffs because,
can't do that.
Hey, we're looking and playing the long game? Richie, I
know Washington did, but you cannot do that.
If they have a well, that was Scott Boras driving that train, I think, in many ways. He's not a Boras client, Paul Skeens. I'm just telling you, if the Pirates are being very conscious about what kind of plan they are laying out here, very intentional about how they're trying to manage Paul Skeens, I got to be honest with you, I don't think that the playoffs would necessarily change their plans. They'd say, well, we're throwing it out the window. Let's add 40 to 50 innings for this guy of high-stress baseball. I actually think they might do that which would enrage their fans if that came to pass.
That would be absolutely nuts. I mean, say they somehow make the wild card three-game series and you win that, then you get into the first round and you win that, then all of a sudden, I mean, I think things change. You got to pitch the guy. But hopefully that they can get to a scenario like that, Chris. But I think it would be insane if they shut them down and they had a chance to win in the postseason. Let's go out to Rudy in Castle Shannon. How you doing, Rudy?
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, I got a question for you. So I understand that they're not going to pitch Skeens in August. So
You mean
guess
Jared
if he
Jones? They're not shutting down Skeens in August. He's going to pitch probably against the Cardinals, right, Chris?
Believe so, yeah.
Yeah, probably on Monday. What's up, Rudy? Go ahead.
So I thought they would, if they don't pitch so many innings, he can get someone with a 6-year deal or something like that.
No, if he wins Rookie of the Year,
he's going to. No. He's going to win the Rookie of the Year.
And it's all gone.
He's going to win the Rookie of the Year unless something catastrophic happens with his performance or whatever. He's going to win Rookie of the Year, and that means this counts as a year of service time.
Yeah.
Period.
All right, let's go out to Dave and Cecil. How you doing, Dave?
Hi. You took part of my thunder with the last thing. I got 3 predictions for Paul Skeens. One, he will win the Rookie of the Year. It's rare for a pitcher to make it, but I think he is well deserving. Second, if he has enough innings, Cy Young. And third, as you mentioned before, if they can make it in the playoffs and win a round or 2, he would be in the running for MVP. What do you think?
That's if they don't shut him down, right, Chris? I don't think that they would. I think that would be the worst thing that they could potentially do, to shut him down if they get to the postseason or in a position to get to the postseason.
If he pitches to the Cy Young point here, if he pitches like he has for the first part of this season, the first 11 starts, he gets to 150 innings and all the numbers look pretty similar, but he's just lagging 40 to 50 innings behind the top guys in the league, I would absolutely give him the Cy Young. He's been dominant. He's been unhittable. Chris Sale's having a great year. Ranger Suarez, other guys, but I think he's got a very real chance to win the NL Cy Young because I firmly believe right now he is the best pitcher in either league.
Yeah, Vegas has him at 500 to 1 odds. I think third right now.
No, not 500 to 1. He might be plus 500. I think it's Sale, Suarez.
Yeah. Plus 500.
And then I saw Skeens at plus 1,200 before the All-Star game, just I think owing to the relative lack of workload. If that's gone down to plus 500, you're not suddenly getting the value that you thought you were.
Yeah, I thought the last I saw was plus 500. Sorry, my mistake. Let's go out to Ron in Indiana. How you doing, Ron?
I think that Jones is not as good as Skins, but I tell you, he's a good pitcher.
Well, yeah, there's no question about it. I don't think any one of us said he wasn't a good pitcher. They need Jones. They need that 1-2 punch. And Keller, all 3 of them, if they're going to make a run at any point, whether it's down the stretch or in the postseason. You need all 3 of those guys, and you probably need more to get to that point.
Well, you know who could help them in this regard, and if he keeps pitching the way he has, I think will take some of the sting out of maybe a skipped Paul Skeens turn through the rotation or something. Luis Ortiz is, I think, the 4th best pitcher on this roster right now. Bailey Falter has been more good than bad this season, but Ortiz has been a revelation, going from long man in the bullpen, innings eater, to suddenly, he's really dialed in his stuff. And that guy can put you away with pitches that make you look very bad. It's another power arm. It's another guy I think the Pirates can start to count on a little bit here. You want to talk about potential unsung heroes, guys who have flown relatively low under the radar who could really help this team down the stretch. I think Ortiz is front and center, maybe at the front of that line on that list, Richie.
So what do you do with Quid Priester then? Is he an innings?
Two dogs, one bone, Richie. I don't know. Mike Tomlin would say you throw the ball out there and, whoever comes back with it. But you know what? He's had rough outings still. But even Priester recently in that last outing where Fleming was the opener and Priester came in, that's probably the best outing of his career. They've got a little bit of actual pitching depth, which feels like you shouldn't even say it out loud lest it go away like that, like it evaporate into thin air. But they've got the top end really good guys, and then it's that second tier that they usually never have that appears to be populated with very live arms and guys who can actually at a moment's notice give you 5, 6, who knows, maybe even 7 really good innings in a given game.
Let's go out to Chuck in Uniontown. How you doing, Chuck?
Thanks, fellas. Do you think it's necessary that the Pirates win both series against the Phillies and the Cardinals to get off on a good start? Can they and will they? Also, they're getting off to a good start. Remember, this team has not swept the series in their own ballpark yet this year. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, hey, thanks a lot, Chuck. I think it's important to get off to a good start. I think that second series against the Cardinals is a little more important than the Philly series. I mean, if they're going to lose a series, I'd rather them lose that first series than the second series You know, if they can split, I'd like to see them go 3-3, and I think I'd be pretty happy as long as those 2 wins were against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, you'd want definitely to get the wins against the Cardinals. I think those series are very important, not just for the team's psyche, but also Ben Cherington's going to be watching closely. You get out of those 2 series, suddenly you're inching very close. You're inside a week from that trade deadline, and how you look in those first 6 games, I think, is going to inform somewhat significantly how Ben Cherington decides to operate.
Do you really think that?
The deadline.
I mean, if they go 1-5, you really think that they might not do anything?
I think they would be disinclined to do anything rash, or I would say major. I don't think they're going to do anything major anyway, but if they went 5-1, or if they somehow ripped off 6 wins in a row to come out of the gate, which I know is highly unlikely. Then again, it was highly unlikely they'd go 6-1 in their last 7 before the break. But if they go 5-1, 6-0, something wild like that, you're going to be in playoff position at that point. If you're Ben Cherington, how could you not start to think about actually adding to this roster?
Any chance they could get Robert or Ward before we take a break here?
Ward, yes. I mean, Robert, I think, costs a lot more, and I think that's the kind of trade that they would be loath to actually participate in.
All right, we got to take a break. Back to wrap things up. Coming up next. Stay right there.